Joining us to discuss this, the day's developments. It has been a shock and awe day in Washington in so many different respects, is former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I think it's fascinating to watch President Trump go to work and to see how rapidly and how decisively he's beginning to do things.
You know, that's the person that I've known for years, but here's what we've got going on day one. He signed 3, for example, executive orders. One is the withdrawal of the U.S. from the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The next is a federal employee government hiring freeze, except for the military. And the next was is the policy in regard to Mexico City. On top of that, he moves on trade. He reinstated a ban on foreign money promoting abortion, federal money supporting abortion. He met with executive labor leaders and such, and he wants to slash regulations, government regulations, by 75% or more. He is now also discussed fighting terrorism, and he's invited the prime ministers of Great Britain, Canada, Israel, and the president of Mexico to all come see him all on day one.
Well, I think, the day's not fully over yet, so who knows what he'll do by 10 o'clock tonight. I'm very encouraged. I think they're moving in the right direction, and I thought the inaugural speech was remarkable. I just did today an entire hour-long speech at the Heritage Foundation, putting Trump and his inauguration in context with Lincoln's first inaugural in 1861 and with Prime Minister Thatcher. And I think when you look at it and you read it, this is a very historic inaugural address which continued the themes that got him elected, which is frankly how it ought to work in a free society. I mean, a lot of our elites are shocked that he actually was repeating themes that people had voted for him because they thought he would do it. But I think that tells you the consistency and the seriousness with which President Trump views all this.
On top of that, he's pursuing bilateral trade negotiations with Great Britain. He is moving forward with Mexico and Canada as it relates to shifting and changing NAFTA. We know that he has said that he's not going to, and he's moving to not enforce the individual mandate as it relates to Obamacare. And his website, now the White House website, actually mirrors the very promises he made on the campaign trail.
Well, and I think what you're going to find, frankly, is that Canada will presently be seen as a part of the American economy, and Canada will actually be closer to the British-American free trade agreement than they will to the deal with Mexico. I think one of the lessons of the last 25 years is that Canada has integrated more and more into our economy. For example, when General Motors builds certain cars, they literally cross the Canadian-American border 5 times, going between different factories. And so I think you're going to see the British are I've met with a number of them. They are very eager to have a trade agreement with the U.S. as part of their way of saying to the European Union, we will survive without you. And I think the fact that President Trump brought Winston Churchill's bust back to the White House is a pretty positive signal to Prime Minister Theresa May that this will be a good visit on Friday.
Well, I think that's all true as well. And he said the words radical Islamic terrorism, which the former President Obama refused to say for 8 years.
Well, and I look at some of the reactions to the speeches. I'm mildly surprised. This was a very powerful, very serious speech, which further implanted the flag that Trumpism is going to be dramatically different than either party's establishment has been in the past. I think it was a very healthy speech and marks an important turning point in American history.
You know, all these companies, starting with Carrier, followed by Ford, followed by Fiat Chrysler, followed by GM, followed by this Alibaba guy who's going to invest billions of dollars in the U.S., followed by Foxconn and its CEO saying an investment for display plant in the U.S. would exceed $7 billion. I mean, serious investment now. Many companies now, Kroger's going to fill 10,000 permanent posts, they announced. Now, the president has said that he's going to cut the corporate tax from one of the highest in the industrialized world at 35% to between 15 and 20%. He also said he'd get rid of 75% or more of the burdensome regulations that business face. Do you believe that that is going to incentivize more of these companies to want to build here?
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was very important that the chief executive officer of Ford Motor Company said, look, we are going to reinvest in the United States because we believe in what Donald Trump's trying to do. And the test for the Michigan Democrats is going to be simple. Do you care about jobs enough that you will vote for the reforms that the head of Ford Motor Company has said are essential in order to continue to build jobs in Michigan? Or are you so committed to the left wing of your party that you'd rather kill jobs than create them? I think this is going to be a very, very important test of where America is going.
Are you worried in any way? There's a couple of battle lines being drawn between the Republican Congress and Donald Trump. For example, Donald Trump has now said that that he wants a spending freeze and that he'd like to see a 10% cut off the top of spending in government. He said he wants a 20% reduction in the workforce size in Washington. And I'm reading today, and this was in the Hill, the GOP and Donald Trump set to battle on spending cuts. And I'm thinking, well, isn't that a conservative Republican position to limit the size and scope of government? Isn't it their goal to reduce the size of government? Isn't it a Republican platform issue to balance a budget? Why would the Republicans be the opposition to this?
Well, look, I always think you have differences of opinion. That's why the Constitution provides for a legislative and an executive branch. I don't take any of those kind of charges very seriously. They're going to work out a lot of stuff between them. And I just met this morning with 15 or 20 members of the Judiciary Committee in the House on the Republican side, and they're all saying, how do we cooperate and coordinate with President Trump? They weren't saying, how do we rebel? But I do think it's natural in the legislative process. As you know, when we balance the federal budget, we increase spending on intelligence and we increase spending on the National Institutes of Health. So sometimes people can have honest differences about how you implement it or what you're implementing. But I think on balance, we're going to find that the Republican Congress is largely, not entirely, but largely going to work with the president to achieve these goals.
What bothers me, though, is why did the same Republican Congress in the interim, by the time after Donald Trump was elected until he was inaugurated, why did they want to expand the debt ceiling by $9.7 trillion over 10 years? Why did they want to bring earmarks back? It seems to me that their agenda is contradicting that of Donald Trump and contradicting the very principles supposedly they went there to stand for.
Well, I let me draw a distinction between the earmarks, which I'm frankly not aware that they brought them back, and
they tried to,
and the Trump position. I suspect the Trump administration did not mind them expanding the debt ceiling because it gives them breathing room to figure out how to get the budget under control and how to move towards a balanced budget. That's a guess on my part, but I'm pretty sure that that's real.
What is the difference between what you call Trumpism, what you described at the Heritage Foundation, and by the way, he wants to adopt the Heritage's plan to reduce the size and scope of government, which I happen to agree with, and conservatism, if any?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, it depends on what you mean by conservatism. I think that there is a very clear distinction in both populism. I'll give an example. Trump is an activist. Trump intervenes with the Carrier Corporation. They decide to stay in Indiana. Trump intervenes and Ford Motor Company decides to stay in Michigan. He actually thinks that's a good thing. But a conservative economist who's a purist would say, oh my gosh, he shouldn't be doing these kind of things. I would argue that every governor in the country does stuff like that, and they know that it's one of the keys to how they get jobs for their state and how they get things done. But that's the sort of example. There's a whole wave of conservatism that was built around American leadership in the world, and America being involved all over the place, and the whole neocon attitude of going out and finding wars to fight. Trump has concluded that in fact wasn't a winning strategy, that it didn't get us where we need to go, and so he takes a very different view of these things. And I think you're going to see a lot of stuff like that, where you're going to have real changes, partly because the world has changed. I was the Republican whip who helped. I got more votes for NAFTA in the House out of Republicans than Gore and Clinton could get out of Democrats. And frankly, in the early 1990s, when it was the final act of Reaganism, because Reagan had proposed it back in the late 1970s, it seemed like the right thing to do. I have to tell you now, I'm equally in favor of fixing it because there are key ways it does not work and is not good for Americans.
I got to take a break. Mr. Speaker, thank you for being with us, and we're going to see you on Hannity tonight, I believe.
I look forward to it. It's always exciting.
We look forward to seeing you then. What an incredible shock and awe first day this has been. The media can't stand it.